Hello and welcome to Blah Blah Comics, Blah Blah Curse Words. I'm Derek.
I'm Colby. Sorry, I got a little distracted. I do have.
We get distracted sometimes.
Yeah, I do. This is a very special podcast because we're having to do this one early for several reasons, but we're going to do our top 5 favorite artists and writers.
Top 5 favorite artists and writers. And yes, we are, both of us are going to have some travel up in our near future, so we're recording a kind of a one-off to keep you guys, keep some material out there for you guys. And much like our very first podcast when we talked about our favorite comics and favorite runs, these are definitely favorites. These are by no means us telling you that these are the most worthy or worthwhile artists and writers in the business. These are just the ones that we personally, if we see their name on a project, it is a book we will be picking up and trying out.
I hate this. I have to insert some sad stuff really quickly, though.
Oh, no.
Because since we're talking about favorite artists, for anyone who doesn't know me, or who doesn't know already from podcast, I'm a huge Rooster Teeth fan of pretty much all their products and all stuff. Monty Ohm passed away yesterday, and he's one of the creators of RWBY. My band is named after the weapon of a character in RWBY. He's was a huge inspiration to me, still is. And they had a really cool sentiment where they told people, instead of flowers or money or anything, in lieu of sending that to honor him, simply create something new to really honor him, because he was known as a creator of very interesting things. So since we're doing
that, man, I apologize.
Oh no, it's fine. I wanted to bring that up since we're doing our favorite artist, and this just happened. He was a huge inspiration to me and an incredible artist. And if anyone is interested, all check out RWBY or his work on Red vs. Blue season 10, especially. He had a very unique style, and so put a sad note there. Would feel bad if I didn't at least put a small shout out to him.
Absolutely. May he rest in peace. Yes. I will definitely be checking out his work this week.
He is awesome stuff. If you're a fan of any, I don't want to put Americanized anime, but just really crazy, really fun, fluid anime. Very awesome work. But anyway, I want to put that in there. But this is the worst segue ever. To do some more of our favorite artists in the comic genre. I think we should start. Do you want to kind of rotate on a list, like I do number 5, you do your number 5 kind of thing?
I think that's the perfect way to do it,
awesome.
Man.
You want to start with the top 5 artists?
Actually, I'd rather do writers. I think artist is going to be a bit crazier.
Okay, well let's do this. I will go first on this one.
Okay.
My number 5, and like I said, I was racking my head on this one all day today on who would make the cut, who wouldn't, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But I realized someone I don't give enough credit to, that I do love his work, and I will buy anything his name on. Number 5, Jeff Lemire.
Jeff Lemire, that is an interesting choice, my friend. And yeah, I do know that you are quite the Jeff Lemire fan.
Well, I'm looking at my bookshelf thinking of stuff I love. Sweet Tooth, I don't talk about enough. That book was incredible. Still, but I can still go back and read it a lot and find new stuff in it. I loved it. His Animal Man run was, redefined the character in a way that hadn't been done since Morrison.
Right.
He took Green Arrow, which was a series that was plummeting down after the New 52 launched, and finally took it into a new direction. So much so that now he's over on Marvel about to do Hawkeye, which will be really fun. Underwater Welder, a lot of stuff he's done has just always captured me, and I've always loved reading it. So I've got to give credit where credit's due, and he is someone that anytime I see a book on the shelf with his name on it, I'm going to pick it up.
Agreed. He did not make my list, but he's one of those comic workhorses who's really come up through the ranks. I remember reading, I think I read the first half of Sweet Tooth, and I deeply enjoyed it. One of these days I need to go back and finish it. I'm a big fan of everything he's done for Valiant. I think he's doing a lot of good work over there, cementing that universe. So, excellent choice, my friend.
Yes, and I'm proud of the choice too.
Okay, so actually, I was wondering if I could cheat a little bit, because I do have a list of 5, but I also have an honorable mention.
Okay, shoot for it.
Okay, my honorable mention is Scott Lobdell.
Oh.
Yes. If we were doing a top 10 list instead of a top 5 list, Scott Lobdell would definitely be in my top 10. I've recognized his many foibles as a writer, but he was the writer on Uncanny and X-Men when I first discovered serialized comics when I was a kid. He was the mastermind behind the Age of Apocalypse, which is still my all-time favorite crossover. So again, like you said, credit where it's due. I have to give a tip of my hat to Scott Lobdell for bringing me into comics and serialized comics and superhero comics. Now, having said that, which is my own catchphrase for the show, my number 5 is a much less shocking pick, Mark Waid.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, everyone knows my complete adoration for Mark Waid's Daredevil, but I'm also a huge fan of all of his DC work. His Superman Birthright was an incredibly seminal work for me, defining Superman, much in the same way that Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman took the character and told elements of the story we'd already seen, but redefined them in a new and interesting way. I adore Kingdom Come on a level that I find hard to talk about. He's the only writer... He's the writer up there with Stan Lee and John Byrne and Jack Kirby, who I have to include in the creative process, to get the Fantastic Four. He's one of the best, if not the best, currently writing mainstream superhero writer, and he is my number 5 pick.
He's one of the few people that gets the joy of superheroes still.
Yes, absolutely.
Great pick. Number 4, kind of keeping interest in Jeff Lemire and someone else I've given more credit to over the past few months, but someone who, once again, if I see his name on a book, I pick it up all the time, and his recent works especially, Scott Snyder.
Yes, I'm not surprised we're seeing Scott Snyder on your list, but go ahead and tell us why.
Simply, Batman, Swamp Thing, American Vampire, all of his independent releases he's done, they've all captured a lot. He's had a few bumps along the way, but even his bumps have normally led to bigger, better things. And even his bumps, when we've gone back and reread them, aren't as bad as we remember.
Right.
But
his failures are interesting failures.
Yes. Especially Batman, a character that was, already thriving in the Morrison run. He was writing during the Morrison run and kind of snuck up and just became the guy after Morrison left. And has become the it guy for Batman for a while, and has once again defined that character for a new generation. His run right now, just his first few arcs alone, will go down as some of the best Batman of this century for sure.
And if nothing else, if I remember reading somewhere, his Batman run has not dipped below 100K issues, or maybe 80K issues, but he has consistently sold among the highest sales comics have seen in the last 20 or 30 years with his Batman title, and they haven't significantly dipped. And if nothing else, that says something. Also, I'm not nearly the Scott Snyder booster you are, sir, but I will say his current work on Witches has really brought me back to him as a horror writer. I never really read American Vampire. I read the first issue. I liked it, but I never picked it up. But Witches has reminded me that dude genuinely has a horror writer's soul, and I deeply appreciate it.
Very much so. And The Wake, which is something I still need to read. I've only read the first issue of The Wake, so I can't completely say, but another great example of his horror writing just coming out, and he just is the guy who knows the psychology of horror. When he brings it out, he brings it out.
Absolutely.
And like you said, he not only is he selling well, but he's also such a fan of comic books in general that he's one of those people who will bring out a reference that you forget, much like Crazy Quilt in the newest Batman.
Right, exactly.
He did it so obscure that it took even the biggest fans a second to go, oh, wait a minute, that is him. So that'll be my number 4, Scott Snyder.
All right, my number 4 is probably the oddest pick on quite possibly either of our writers' list, because he is actually a writer who is deceased.
Oh.
But for me, I've talked a little bit on here about my weird nostalgia for the 1970s, and specifically 1970s Marvel Comics. Weird because I was born in 1981 and have no actual reference point for nostalgia there, but I do really adore 1970s Marvel Comics, and to me, the voice of 70s Marvel is best captured by Steve Gerber.
Okay.
Steve Gerber you would recognize as the creator of Howard the Duck. He also did an extended run on the Defenders that I absolutely adored, and also a run on Man-Thing. The other writer that I seriously considered putting in the slot was, of course, Jim Starlin. But whereas Starlin really brought the cosmic to Marvel, Steve Gerber pretty much spearheaded the whole movement in the 1970s of creators who grew up reading comics or are now creating comics and genuinely had the idea or opinion or hope that comics could change the world because comics changed them. So they were really fighting for, making the world a better place through superhero comics. And Steve Gerber really, like I said, I feel like he spearheaded that, but he also knew how to satirize it just gently enough that, the nerds could, take the gentle ribbing and the gentle winking and go along with it. He was one of us. He made fun of us, but he was one of us, and I absolutely adore his work for it.
I'm very glad you put him there, because that is a creator in this day and age. He's not by no means forgotten, but his name is not brought up enough, or as much as it should be, at least.
I absolutely agree with that. Yes, sir.
Because anyone who reads stuff like Super Gods or anything over the history of comics books knows how important he was, but yet his name in the main culture or the pop culture, whatever comics falls under now,
right,
is not brought up as much as it should be. Although Howard the Duck is now back in the mainstream, so maybe he'll start making a comeback.
One hopes. And speaking of, just as a real quick aside, there's some really great stories about all of those guys and the 70s at Marvel as a whole. And Sean Howe's really terrific, really fantastic must-read book, Marvel Comics: The Untold Story.
Yes. Go get it on Audible.
Yes.
And Audible should sponsor us.
Oh, that would be the best.
It'd be cool. They sponsor a lot of people. I'm just saying, Audible, we would be gracious, and we would accept the reins.
And we would talk you guys up so much because we both use you tremendously.
I'll be using you tomorrow to listen to my number 3's new book. My number 3 being Neil Gaiman.
Ah, fantastic.
Yes, who I think it was expected. I don't know. He may not be on your list, but
he came close. He actually is not, but he was one I seriously considered.
But yes, he is. I mean, some people know his work, but you can't go without saying Sandman holds up better than. Oh, I can't think. Then almost it is up there with the best of the best as far as it's one of the few comics where not only can you reread it a ton, not only can you always go back and find new stuff, but it's the perfect book to introduce so many people to comics. Go, okay, if you don't think you think it's just for kids, read this.
Right.
But not just Sandman. His work, even his odder work, like the Angela work he did for Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
Is really enjoyable and odd. Even stuff like the Eternals run he had at Marvel. I love the idea of him going to Marvel and somehow turning Marvel for one's comic series into Vertigo, basically.
Right.
But it's someone that just has such a grasp of language and knows how to use it as a weapon or how to use it as anything he wants to.
Absolutely.
And of course, he went on to further the skills in novels, but he constantly comes back to comics, and he's someone that, like you said, he truly believes that comics can be a higher form of medium than what most people expect from it, and has always championed that idea of it's not just some sideshow attraction, it's the next form, or it's a form leading to something bigger.
Right.
So therefore, Neil Gaiman, number 3. Those were 2 big heavy hitters back to back.
Yes, definitely. Quick aside, in the appendix of From Hell, Alan Moore has the greatest compliment I've ever read about another creator. He was talking about how he actually went to Neil for advice on exactly what foul language to use in a certain part of From Hell, because, as he put it, Neil Gaiman can swear in 8 different centuries.
Yes.
And actually, I have another heavy hitter for my number 3 as well. My third favorite is Warren Ellis.
Oh, I almost thought he'd be higher on your list.
That is as high as I could bring myself to put him, mostly because you'll understand when you hear the 1 and 2.
Okay.
But yeah, basically Transmetropolitan. Close the books, we're done. But I mean, Planetary, The Authority, his current work on Trees. I was a big fan of Dr. Sleepless. The guy is an idea machine, almost to the point where the outflow of ideas breaks the machine. He's notorious for not being able to finish a project or for losing interest in a project and jumping on to something else. But man, and then his superhero work is always fun and interesting. He's always trying new things, but stays within the bounds of the characters. I think he cares about superheroes more than he wants to admit, much like Garth Ennis in a very similar way. Yeah. But his work is always brain-breaking on some level in a way that I deeply, deeply enjoy. And yeah, he's not as good as the other two that I'll name, but he's someone that I keep coming back to as a fan and as a reader.
Very nice. You know, I basically put my version of Warren Ellis is number 2 because I couldn't put him number 1 just because he is proven, but he has a very small catalog as of now. So my number 2 will be Gerard Way.
I was wondering where he was going to land on this list.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Gerard Way, for multiple reasons, is an idol. And I don't use idol loosely, but yeah. He, Umbrella Academy is what got me heavy into comics, back into comics after I had left for a long time. The worlds he creates, whether it be Umbrella Academy or Killjoys or recent stuff like his Edge of Spider-Verse comic, he has this just natural knack for creating a world that feels unto itself and something that you jump into, get a taste of, and can live in for a while. And stuff that you can see where the influences line up, but it doesn't feel like any of the influences. He's someone that you can see how much he loves Morrison. You can see how much he grew up on horror movies, how much he grew up on punk music. But all that doesn't oversaturate the product. It still feels like something new, which is very hard to do this day and age, to take a bunch of different elements and somehow make something new that is unrecognizable from the elements.
I admit I have not delved deeply enough into Gerard Way's catalog, but that is absolutely true. The little bit that I've read was very fresh, very unique. He definitely wears his Morrison influence on his sleeve, but not in a bad way, and more in a, this guy showed me how that you can do comics however you want, and he definitely does comics how he wants, and I applaud him for that.
I'll put it this way. His first book won an Eisner.
Right.
That's not only almost unheard of, that's just something that coming for anyone who comes out of the gate and go, oh, it's a musician, he can't write, and the first book wins an Eisner.
Right.
I don't normally care about awards, but Eisners, they're still actually matter and they care who they give it to.
Absolutely, no, totally.
And and even stuff like Killjoys, which I understand a lot of people didn't like because it had so much roots in My Chemical Romance. Even the comic series itself just felt so different from any other world that's all my bias aside, all my love for Gerard Way as what he's done in the past aside, his comic work by itself speaks volumes. And Umbrella Academy 3 is being worked on now, and he showed a lot or tweeted a lot of stuff about it, and I'm beyond excited for that. But
I saw the tweet that Umbrella Academy 3 was under Way, and I was very excited, mostly for you.
Yes.
But just the fact that, unique, fun, and different comics are still being made in this day and age.
When it's
more power to him.
Especially someone that has connections to Marvel and DC, and for some reason still, maybe it's just how he likes writing, but it's so cool to see someone sticking to their independent work and being like, I'll do some Marvel eventually, maybe.
Right.
Even though he's had plenty of offers. But anyway, that would be my number 2.
My number 2, I have a strong feeling now that I know who your number 2 is, that my number 2 is your number 1.
Well, quite possibly.
But my number 2 is obviously Grant Morrison.
Yes.
And I don't know if we need to go any further into why Grant Morrison is amazing, considering, according to at least my brother and a few of our other listeners, Grant Morrison is all we talk about on this podcast.
I'm okay with that too. Nameless comes out this week. Get ready for more Morrison.
Yes, and you're going to hear about it because we are going to talk about it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's my number 2.
My number 1 is Grant Morrison. Because of Doom Patrol, Invisibles, Flex Mentalo, and almost everything he's ever done.
Yes.
He is the only writer. Why he's my number 1? He's the only writer that I can sit down and say I have enjoyed everything I've read from him, and I truly mean that. Most of these people on this side I've enjoyed almost all their stuff, or most, but I can see the problems. Grant Morrison is the only one. Why I put him number 1? I can truly be given any Morrison thing, and so far has stood the test of enjoying it.
Absolutely, I agree. I get behind that 100%. Even the stuff of Morrison's that probably shouldn't work.
Yep.
For example, I think there was some really legitimate criticism about Happy.
Yep.
I don't care. It worked for me.
I still feel I still say everyone was talking about how happy bugged them because I thought he cussed too much, and I still think it's his shot at Mark Millar to this day.
Yeah, or Garth Ennis.
Oh, true. Very well. It could have been either one. I obviously go Millar just because of his love-hate
cantankerous relationship.
Yeah. Yes. Well, who is your number one? I'm intrigued now.
My number one is actually Brian K. Vaughan.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Yeah, and Brian K. Vaughan for me is number one is because I love all the work that I've talked about from all these other creators. I do adore all these other creators, especially Grant Morrison. Brian K. Vaughan, to me, is inspirational. Brian K. Vaughan, I put down an issue of Saga and hope like hell one day I can write a story that beautiful and touching and smart and funny.
Which also comes back this week.
Yes. Yes, we get a double dose of Morrison and Vaughan this week, and that's just almost too exciting for words. But ever since the first issue of Why the Last Man came out, I've been absolutely in awe of the way Vaughan can construct a scene, can pace a comic, ends every issue on an old school cliffhanger that leaves you screaming, literally screaming for the next issue.
He is a king of pace.
His choice of artists, his ability to just tell a story in sequentialized form is nothing short of breathtaking and, like I said, inspirational. He is someone I genuinely look up to and wish to hopefully one day stand in the shadow of.
Very nice. And see, I think you said something there that is key, I think, to all of our choices. All of our choices so far do have quite the eye for artist. Mm-hmm. And I think it really shows how much that combo works, and why in this podcast especially we wanted to include our top 5 artists, because I have an odd feeling that we'll see a lot of people that work with each other on these lists.
Your list, perhaps. My list is fucking crazy.
Okay, well, I'm wrong.
My list. It goes in the completely opposite direction of my writers. And you're absolutely right. The symbiosis of writer and artist on comics is very, very important. But there are artists that stand out to me that, it's purely the artist that makes me buy the book, not the writer. Do you want me to go ahead and start on my art list?
Yeah, really quick, though, I want to say an odd honorable mention. Someone I was really close to putting on here was actually Jeff Lemire. Just because his work on Sweet Tooth, and him and Matt Kent have this really cool art that is almost like watercolor. It is watercolor, but watercolor meets just really cave drawing almost. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Right, it's very impressionistic.
Yes, and it sticks with it. They're simple images that stick with you like no one else in comics for the most part. Both those artists I wanted to give a quick shout out to, because they didn't make my list, but they were tooth and nail trying to make my list, and I was so willing to put them on there, but there were just 5 other people I had to. But yes, go ahead. Who is your number 5, sir?
Actually, I'd like to throw out, I do have an honorable mention for my artist list as well. And it's in the same vein. My honorable mention is Andy Kubert.
Yes.
Personally, I think he's one of the best traditional superhero artists working today, very much in the Jim Lee vein. He doesn't always get his perspective right, and his characters tend to be overly histrionic when it comes to facial expressions. But for balls-out superhero comic action, if you can't get Jim Lee, I think Andy Kubert is a really close second. And I love the guy's work. I've loved his work since he worked with Scott Lobdell on X-Men, so I had to give him an honorable mention. My number 5 is unfortunately a tie. Because they're two artists who actually work together and are so symbiotic with each other's work that you can't really split them up.
Okay, I have a similar choice like that.
Fantastic, excellent. My number 5 is Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, also known as the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
There you go.
Yes, those guys. Laird, you can pretty much lay the design of the characters at his feet. Eastman, as I want to say Tim Callahan put it, nobody draws dirty, trashed out New York like Kevin Eastman. That dude puts grime and garbage and detritus, packs it in detail by detail into every panel of those old school Ninja Turtle comics, and it's a feast for the eyes every issue. So I love those guys. Those guys are a big part of the reason I am who I am today, and I absolutely have to give credit where it's due. My number 5 pick, the creators of the Turtles, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird.
Very nice. I did not pick a similar choice for my number 5, but my number 5 is someone that also was in the top 10 on my writers, but I felt that once again the writers were very strong, but her art has always stuck out to me a lot, and it's Becky Cloonan, someone that I love and adore all of her writing, all of her art, but her art especially in books like what she did with American Virgin and East Coast Rising have always stuck with me. And it's this very cool, anime, cartoonist anime combo, but done in a very realistic way.
Right.
But
I think Cloonan is a fantastic choice, man. She's done some really great independent work. I want to say she did. Was it Blue Monday that she's known for?
Maybe.
Or is that another very similar artist?
I'm not positive on that, to be honest.
Somebody email us, blahblahpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me I'm crazy. But I think Cloonan is a fantastic choice for your number 5. I applaud that, sir.
She captures energy in characters like no one else, and especially her work on American Virgin, which is a book that I don't believe we've talked about, in a book that I really do enjoy.
Right.
That sadly was canceled a bit prematurely. Mm-hmm. Pun kind of intended. And, but overall, her work, her writing and her art together, and she's done combos like East Coast Rising, where it captures both very well, and someone that I think is a good bridge point for non-comic readers to come into and for comic readers to love, because she just has an eye for capturing all different elements that people can just latch onto.
Right. That's interesting that you say she's a writer, or an artist, excuse me, that is both reaches out to non-comic readers and comic readers, because I kind of feel like my number 4 pick also does that.
Oh.
If I may.
Yes.
My number 4 pick is Jonan Vasquez.
Oh, yes.
Known either as to the older crowd as the creator of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, to the slightly younger crowd as the creator of Invader Zim.
Grr.
Yes, and grr. There has not been another artist who has had such a single impact on my particular personal art style as Jonan Vasquez. Hugely influential to me as a creator, and hugely influential, I feel, to the comics medium as a whole. His work at Slave Labor on Johnny and Squee, I feel like did have an impact on the voice of the industry that not a lot of people acknowledge. And then, of course, his crossover, bringing Invader Zim to Nickelodeon, and bringing his particular madcap humor and style to children, I think did have a definite effect on later cartoons and later stories and series that came out.
That was part. I would put that part of, especially me growing up, that was right at the cultural epicenter of going back to my list when My Chemical Romance was big, when kind of the dark humor and comedy as tragedy and tragedy as comedy was getting really popular with youth, and it was at its forefront and really helped shape a lot of, for better or worse, a lot of people like me. And I find it interesting, like you brought up when you were younger, Johnny Homicidal Maniac was big on you, and Invader Zim was big on me.
Right.
So it's a very cool, like you said, bridging not only age gaps, but bridging cultural gaps is really an impressive feat to do.
I agree.
My number four kind of has done that, whereas he has two characters that he's very well known for doing, being Spawn and Batman, and my number 4 is Greg Capullo.
Nice, good choice.
Who we talked about earlier, Scott Snyder's ability to write horror. In my opinion, no one can draw horror, or especially superhero horror comics, quite like Capullo. His attention for detail and how he captures movement and just like the anger, the fear, and the happiness even of the characters themselves. The best choice is Batman and Spawn. What he's done in both of his runs on both of those books is partly what made them what they are.
Absolutely. And what I find interesting about Capullo's work is that it is so animated and cartoony on the surface, but that he reveals such depth and such horror within that supposedly very light animated style.
What he's done, the perfect example of me is the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing how he handled Joker with the face off, every issue the face slowly decaying more and more, and the cartoony expression literally decaying and still creepily holding on to like a childlike wonderment, was the creepiest and coolest thing I've seen art-wise in a while. And it's something that, going back when you read it in trade, you catch on immediately, and it makes the trade book so much creepier. that you can see the Joker decomposing in real time, and also that Joker. I mean, it should say that they have made a mask of that Joker, and it's become a very popular mask now.
Right.
So that would be my number 4.
Excellent choice. I actually have no segue for this one. I can't think of anything clever for to segue to my number 3. Maybe just the fact that both Capullo and this guy have a tendency to bring their own style to superheroes and change the look of those superheroes with it. My number 3 is actually Chris Bacallo.
Oh, their names are kind of similar. That's our connection.
Yes. Bacallo is currently one of the flip artists on Uncanny X-Men. He was most famous probably for either his work on Shade the Changing Man with Peter Milligan or Generation X with, again, Scott Lobdell. And his artwork, again, very animated, very cartoony. He has a thing about layouts, as in, I don't think he really cares about layouts or panel structure in a way that I find absolutely interesting. He's complex and interesting and fun storyteller, and I don't know, I've always adored his work, and it's very hard for me to put a finger on why. It may be, oh my god, my puppy just fell off the bed in a hilarious way. You can do it. He's trying to get up on the bed with a giant toy. There you go, you got it. Sorry, Bacallo. I'm never sure how to say that name, and he's got a really good taste in colorists. I don't know. His is an art style that I have a very hard time defining why I like it, but it's another one who, if he's on a book, I will pick it up just to look at the art. I'm a huge fan. I don't know what else much to say beyond that.
You know, that's all I think when it comes to our favorite list. That's all you need to be is a huge fan, and that is the key.
Yes.
So, I don't have a good segue for this one either, but it's someone. I imagine you'll have someone very similar to this. If he's not on your list, you'll have someone very similar. I'm almost positive. But it's someone who he may take forever, and I mean forever, to do a single panel or a single cover. But he has the most breathtaking art of, I think, anyone on the list. And my number 3 is Dave McKean.
Oh, not who I thought you were going to say. That's beautiful, man. Good choice.
They're the reason why he's one of the few artists who. The dust covers, the jackets for all his Sandman volumes are collected in one volume, and it's a very well-selling book. Mm-hmm. They're the reason for that. His Hellblazer covered in art. His interior arts for Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Hill, is some of the most... I know it's very controversial work and very diversive, but for me, that was the comic that proved to me comics are not for kids. That was at the Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum with David McKean, mostly because of how the art was treated, how the panels reflected, and how he does art is so unique to himself.
Right.
And he is someone that, if you show just a picture of his art to someone who does not know comics or someone who has no clue what it is, one, if they're not into it, they will think you're crazy because that's his art. Two, it transcends the comic medium by itself, where his panels by themselves are truly art in every sense of the word, and just evoke so much emotion from his single images. And his Sandman covers alone, I can't harp on that enough, and his Hellblazer stuff are just breathtakingly gorgeous.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's not on my list. In fact, my only 2 left are both pretty traditional superhero artists. Oh. I'm almost ashamed to admit, but that is an excellent choice, man. I also want to throw out his work on Mirror Mask. Remains a very seminal point for me in my life.
Yes, he's someone that, like I said, the moment I put Neil Gaiman on my writers list, what I made first, I'm glad I did, because it was the moment that dawned on me, I have to put Dave McKean, because that is so much of what got me, like I said, into serious comics, was just that artwork, just the covers of Sandman and just the interiors of Arkham. I still look at those and they blow my mind on how gorgeous they are.
Yes, absolutely. That is a top-notch choice, man. Again, I have no clever segue for this, because my next one is a very, very pretty traditional superhero artist, but I say that because I follow him on Twitter, and his sketch of the day makes me want him to draw every single comic coming out of Marvel and DC right now. And if Marvel would please, for the love of God, make him the artist on a Fantastic Four book, I would be happy forever. My number 2 is Chris Samnee.
Oh, yes.
We've talked at length about how wonderful his Daredevil run is. with Mark Waid, who was also on my writer's list. And as I was telling my wife earlier, my love of those two men goes to the point where I bought their Rocketeer miniseries that they did for IDW because it was Mark Waid and Chris Samnee, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. But that was not a character I would normally follow. But since Chris Samnee was drawing it, I had to take a look at it, and it was gorgeous. That guy, his composition is unmatched in the industry today. His superheroes look like real people doing extraordinary things. He has an almost Steve Dillon-esque grasp of facial structure and the way and expression, almost like a 180-degree on Andy Kubert, who, like I said, overly histrionic and can really oversell it. I think Samnee plays it perfectly subtly. He can sell levels of subtlety that I don't know if there's another artist out there that can do it today. Best superhero comics artist working in the industry today by far, and definitely, like I say, someone whose every comic from now until forever I will be picking up to check out.
Very nice. Very, very cool, very cool. My number 2 is someone that I had picked up comics where the writer was not very good, and continued to pick them up solely because of the art. And my number 2 is Frank Quitely.
Yes, Frank Quitely was so almost on my list.
I mean, for me, if I have to go down to one work, his work on All-Star Superman is All-Star Superman. That and Flex Mentallo.
His Flex Mentallo is just something else. I mean, literally, it's out of this world.
Yes, he. That's the only way to put it. He can capture those moments of disbelief and those moments of pure batshit insanity like no other, and somehow keep them grounded in a real-looking world too. I mean, the famous All-Star Superman cover and the interiors of Superman just being Superman and being how he probably really would be are so breathtaking and just capture a character without being in heroic poses, without them being in the generic stances. He was able to capture these characters and still make them look heroic but relatable.
Right.
And his X-Men work too does a very similar thing where he's taking, kind of like what you said, taking superheroes, bringing them to a human level, but still making sure there's still something super about them.
Yeah, his new X-Men work originally turned me off when I saw the preview pages, but then when I saw it actually in story and saw what he was doing on a panel-to-panel compositional basis, I fell in love, and I've been in love ever since.
Yes. It's hard not to.
Yes. And then speaking of people, it's hard not to love. And before I say my number 1, I want to say I feel tremendously guilty about Fiona Staples not making this list. As soon as you said Becky Cloonan, I realized that there was a female artist whose work I absolutely adore in Fiona Staples, and perhaps should have been on this list had this been a top 10 list. I really like to think I would have put her on here. My only defense is, I have seen exactly 24 issues of her work instead of growing up with it like I have the rest of these creators, especially the creator I'm about to name. So I do want to give a shout out. Fiona Staples, amazing artist, love her to death. She did not make my list, but
it's hard. Getting a top 5 is very difficult.
Yes. You suggested top 5 or top 10, and I was like, let's just do top 5. And then while I was working on my top 5, I was like, why didn't I say 10?
Yeah. I'm really quick. I don't think it's who it is, but I'm surprised. Well, go ahead and say it is. Cause if it's not who this is, I'm surprised someone else didn't make your list.
Okay, actually, my number 1, my favorite comic artist in perpetuity, fucking Jack Kirby, dude.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of people whose comics I will buy just for the art, I will buy any goddamn book Jack Kirby ever picked up. I recently picked up the Superpowers miniseries, which was the comic book built to sell a toy line back before Secret Wars did it in the 1970s. Not even written by Jack Kirby, but it had Jack Kirby art, so I went ahead and bought it because hell yeah, Jack Kirby. That guy, I mean, what can I say that hundreds of much more talented critics and art people haven't said about him? Dynamic, imposing, just everything about his work. It's full. It brings tears to my eyes and fullness to my belly. It inspires me. It impresses me. I will I will always love and adore Jack Kirby's artwork. And of course, he's passed away almost 15 years now, 10 years now. He passed away in '94. So it's not like he's creating new stuff, but he left behind a legacy and a body of work that I cannot argue with. As a fan of old school Marvel and as a fan of the stuff he did afterwards on it, either with DC or on his own, Jack Kirby now and forever.
Yep. Want to say you may have aged yourself for a second there when you said 10 years ago he died in '94.
Oh, yeah. 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
I'm an old man.
But, no, yeah, Jack Kirby, by far, I don't think arguably he is the most influential artist in comics history.
Right.
Like, if you're in comics art, by any means, you at one point were inspired by Jack Kirby.
And if you say you weren't inspired by Jack Kirby, you were inspired by an artist who built his career off of Jack Kirby. So
I am surprised Ross did not make your list.
I love Alex Ross. I really do. He's a hometown hero. He's someone whose work I love and respect. I don't know if I'd list him as one of my favorite artists, though, to be totally honest.
That's who I was alluding to when I said I thought Dave McKean was my version of someone of yours.
Right.
I thought, because that's the only person I could compare Dave McKean's art to in some form or fashion would be Alex Ross, because they're very separate, but they have the similar painting aspect to it.
Right, exactly.
Well, my number one is someone, I don't think it's a huge shock to it, but someone whose art stands out for me like no other, and stands out in the comics art world because no one else is like his. It's Gabriel Ba.
Right. I figured it was going to be either Fabio Moon or Gabriel Ba.
And that's what I mean. That they're at a team, I put them as there too, because those two brothers, they have a style unto themselves. The work on Umbrella Academy, on Casanova, on Day Tripper. I've talked a lot about emotion. I love artists that can capture emotion, and much like Matt, like I talked about earlier with Matt Kent or Jeff Lemire, like they're very impressionistic work and very simple, but they're able to capture so much with such simplicity that in Day Tripper you feel every emotion. And even if you were to get the original Brazilian cut, you can still get what's going on because of the art in that book. Once again, I can't speak enough about them without just gushing about, oh, it's beautiful, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. But it is
beautiful.
Yeah. It's beautiful work, and it's work, like I said, that's no one else in the comics industry that I can think of does anything like it.
Right.
And I don't think anyone else would try to, because on paper, if you describe the artwork, that's why I'm trying not to, it doesn't sound good if you describe it.
Right.
You have to see it. You have to go get it. And I can't stress enough, if you want to see their best example, I would honestly say, for those two alone, Day Tripper, their work that they wrote, they drew, it's completely them. And it is one of the most emotional rides in comics books, period. It's one of the few comics that every time will make you cry. And that's in a good way, but be prepared for that.
Right. I actually have the miniseries sitting on my shelf, and it's been there for a year because I know it is going to be an emotional toll in a good way to read it, but I don't feel like I've properly prepared myself to take that dive. I am, however, and I'm sure by the time this podcast goes up, the sale will actually be over, but Comixology currently has the first new image volume of Casanova on sale for $10. That's 11 issues of Casanova for $10, and I am so crazy taking advantage of that. You guys don't even know.
It's always worth it. We talked about earlier a lot. We talked about Matt Fraction a lot last week, and that podcast, the first part of that podcast is up. The Comic Collision will be coming up soon. So if you want to hear more about that, you can go check it out. But yeah, Casanova, highly recommended. But yeah. Overall, I guess I was kind of surprised how different our lists were. I think we only shared... Did we only share Morrison?
I think we only shared Morrison. Like I said, Quietly was very nearly on my list. Chris Burnham was very nearly on my list. But I'm much more of a... And I don't mean this as any kind of insult. I'm much more of an old school superhero comics fan than you.
I'm very glad we got that, because I was looking at my list and worried that the latest artist I have started working in the late... Or started doing known work in the 80s.
Right.
Yeah, I'm very glad we had a bit more diversity there than just saying that. Someone else I was very close to mine, and I respect him immensely, and I do enjoy his work, and will buy almost anything he's on. I didn't mention, but Alan Moore, I think for both of us, is someone we'll always check out his work. But like we said before, he has had work that I know for me personally I haven't adored or loved. Where I will still give it a chance, but I won't necessarily pick up every issue. Where everyone on both those top 5 lists, I will buy pretty much every issue in a series because their name is on it.
Absolutely, that's pretty much why he didn't come up on my list either. For example, I'm not even picking up Cross 100, even though it's supposed to be pretty decent for an Alan Moore story. But he's not he's not the draw he used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about greatest of all times, then if we're talking GOATs, then he's in the top 5, if not the top 3, if not the number 1. But for me personally, favorite people, stuff that I will go to every single issue, give every single thing a try, he definitely does not make the top 5 for me. One that I feel like on my artists, though he could also actually go on the writer side, who I felt unfortunate that I had to excise. You've heard me talk a lot about him lately in relation to his latest series, Walter Simonson.
Yeah. I kind of expected that name, honestly.
Yeah, he was on the list until the last possible second.
Someone that was really close to my list that didn't make it, and I was surprised once again. I was just thinking about artists or writers I really love, and ones that I sometimes I'll mention which I should, and it's someone I know we talked about doing another comic collision with possibly, but honestly, Jason Aaron.
I can see that.
He not only Scalped and Southern Bastards, but I think proves this dude knows Oklahoma and Texas way too well.
Right.
But Wolverine and the X-Men.
Mm-hmm. His entire Wolverine Overt is actually a really smart, fun take on the character that had been missing from that character for nigh on a decade.
And it's somebody that he's one of those not even up and coming, but he's someone that just kind of like Jeff Lemire, where he fights tooth and nail to get to the top, to be known the best. Someone that I ultimately respect because he's not resting on any laurels or being like, oh, I have this award or this award. He is someone that is continuously putting out books. I mean, Scalped was one of the most praised books I can remember in recent history, and he overshadowed it with Southern Bastards.
Right.
I love when someone can overshadow what a lot of people consider their great work. Is always amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. Big props to Aaron. And another thing that you can say about that is it takes a lot of balls to be the first guy to come in and say, okay, all that Star Wars stuff you guys have been loving for the last 20 years, my Star Wars guys. Yeah. And he comes out and he puts out the first issue and everybody's like, yeah, this guy's Star Wars. Okay.
Do you realize almost every creator we mentioned has work coming out this week in some form? I mean, Neil Gaiman has a book coming out. Morrison has new stuff coming out. Aaron, Star Wars coming out. I just had the list up, but there's a ton of people on our list that have work coming out.
Man, if there's a new printing of something from Jack Kirby coming out this week would be perfect.
And it would be amazing if that popped up right now. We need to look it up. Knowing how luck works, there may be a deluxe version of some Kirby, like Kirby's art coming out this week.
I'm pretty sure the deluxe version of Walter Simonson's Star Slammers is coming out this week, which is really hilarious. Just the conflagrance of all of our favorite stuff.
Once again, it's really cool. We can talk a second because we won't get to a podcast over this week's comics for at least a week.
Right.
So we can talk a little bit about it because we're about 50 minutes, so we can talk a little bit. This is another big week.
Yeah. Let me check my list. I've got a pretty full list here.
Yeah, I know there's several books coming out that I am excited for that I wasn't even thinking. Of course, top of the pile, Nameless is coming out this week, which is really cool.
Oh, we're finally getting a new issue of Transformers G.I. Joe.
Yes. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so, Kirby-esque. I mean, Tom Skill is definitely the heir to Jack Kirby with that book.
Like we said, with new Star Wars is coming out. Lady Killer #2 is coming out.
Yes. Very excited about that.
That's right. Witches #4 is coming out.
Yep.
So there's our Snyder.
Miss Marvel's coming out. My favorite superhero comic going today.
Yes.
East of West, our much talked about Jonathan Hickman latest work, along with his work on Avengers.
Oh, the new Valiant Imperium is coming out.
Yes, and I'm actually very stoked about that because it's still the same creative team who's been doing Harbinger work for the run of the series. So I think that's got tremendous potential to be very good.
Saga 25.
Yes.
And then, actually, this is the week Black Vortex starts as well.
Yeah, I'm not stoked about that one.
Okay. I may pick it up, see how it goes, but I can understand.
I'm gonna wait for the nice hardcover.
Yep. Although the new Hellboy and BPRD comes out, and I've been hearing this is pretty good. I haven't picked it up yet, but from a lot of fans, I've heard this is somewhat of a return to form.
That's fantastic. I really feel like you can't go wrong with Hellboy or BPRD, even if you don't have the big creators on it. The ideas and the concepts are just so sound.
Well, it's especially with Hellboy and BPRD, it's Mike Mignola. I always mess up his name. Mignola. Mignola.
Something. Close enough.
Yeah, it's cool seeing him attached to Hellboy products as always. And that's right. The big one of the big Spawn issues come out this week.
Like is it 250 coming out this week?
Yeah, 250 coming this week, which is Todd McFarlane's big goodbye. And then I think that's, if I read right, then they're having a number 1 with the new creative team, and then I think they go back to numbering, if I heard correctly.
Which is kind of hilarious. It's kind of a nice big FU to the big 2, which is totally fine by me. I think it's fun.
And then the new Superman comes out where he gets his new costume.
Yes, and apparently the powers to occasionally explode, I guess. I don't know. I really haven't heard what his new power is.
Yeah, I don't.
It made fun of on Twitter.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me. This is such a, like... Oh, and that's the other thing. And the new American Vampire comes off hiatus.
Oh, fantastic.
God, our list is everywhere.
Yes.
Dude, that should be proof to anyone listening. We know what we're talking about in some weird way. Or we're just naming people that are very popular.
Yes, either that or we have our finger on the pulse of mainstream what most people are reading in comics today.
Yes. But yeah, Superman 8 or 38, sorry.
No worries.
Has a very very retro feel to it. He's getting a new power, a very 50s throwback kind of thing, or 60s even of.
I hope so. I hope that is what it feels like, and that it doesn't feel like back when he became Electric Superman.
Speaking of, really quick, I picked up possibly the most random thing ever. I had to buy it because I've never seen it before. I bought it today. Was the mostly once again because Grant Morrison is writing on it, the JLA Wildcats crossover.
That crossover is so much fun.
Yep, I'm holding it right now.
I love it. I am actually. You can put me down as a fan.
Yeah, I was in a comic shop today looking around because I knew this was coming up, and I kind of wanted to pick up some stuff just because I was in the mood, and that was on the shelf. I was like, I can't turn that down.
Hell yeah!
Also comes out this week. I know you weren't a big fan of it, but we talked about him a lot lately. Matt Fraction's Fantastic Four omnibus comes out.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that is something that Marvel's putting some money behind. Yeah. I mean, good for them and good for Fraction. I hope he sells a few copies and gets a few bucks.
I wonder, once again, I think Fraction's just, his name is becoming so big, I'm thinking they're wanting to pony up and be like, okay, well, we have a lot of his work while he's getting big. Let's put it out again.
Yeah, exactly. It gives me hope that as soon as his Hawkeye run is finished, I'll be able to get a nice Hawkeye omnibus.
Yeah. Speaking of, I recently was reading his FF work. His FF is so fun.
FF was great. His Fantastic Four missed the mark, but FF, like I said, and that a lot of that had to do with Mike Allred, who I think brought a lot of personality and soul to the book.
Something else random coming out. The Uncanny Avengers omnibus is coming out as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, and that series is back again, and I hate to say this because we've mentioned it before. Rick Remender has his Uncanny X-Force run is one of the best runs in comics of the past 20 years for superhero comics, I would say.
Definitely one of the best X-Men comics in the last 20 years.
And Uncanny Avengers, for some reason, just couldn't capture that fun, and they are trying so hard to push that again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. I love Rick Remender. He can do some great work, but
Black Science is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Rick Remender. This is what is so perplexing about Uncanny Avengers. Deadly Class is really fun too.
Yes.
He's doing some amazing work. And the dude's a workhorse. He has 3 Image titles going on right now, and then whatever else he's doing on Marvel.
Right.
But Uncanny Avengers, I just can't. I could never get into it.
Yeah, it didn't. You've heard me rant about Uncanny Avengers. I've actually sat down and read everything that is available on the Marvel Unlimited app for that series, and yeah, it's pretty terrible. I mean, he really shat the bed on that one, I feel. And
I hate to say, because I can't stress enough that we like Rick Remender a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so disappointing is that almost every other work he's done in the past few years has been really good. I mean, I'll go back and say it again. Well, is it Uncanny X-Force 15, the Archangel one?
It started at like issue 13 or 14.
That part alone is I can't speak volumes. I can speak volumes on how amazing that is, but if anyone wants to check out amazing Rick Remender doing superhero comics, the Archangel stuff and Uncanny X-Force, they're the reason why that was nominated for so many awards and won so many awards.
I still think just the first issue is one of the cleanest, most intriguing first issues of a superhero comic I've read forever.
Those for the I can't remember them all. I believe Apocalypse Solution is the first one.
Yes.
But Apocalypse Solution, the next one I think was Death Clock Nation.
Yeah.
And then Archangel Saga.
The Dark Angel Saga.
Dark Angel Saga, and then is where it got muddy.
Yeah, Isad Ribic was not the right artist, and he tried. He did some stuff that was really tied into Excalibur continuity. That you had to know 20-year-old X-Men comics, X-Men spinoff comics, to really grasp what was going on there.
Art, the dream sequences and the odd sequences in that whole art, you could never tell what was what. That's a good example of a bad pairing of artist and writer, where the artist we talked about when that was coming out. That's all we were talking about, is how that artist was so unfit for that comic, because he came back with his final few story arcs that were really strong again.
Right, yeah.
All the writing all the way strong. Just that artist, he was not the right choice for that comic.
I want to say it was Isad Ribic who's done some really fantastic stuff with Jason Aaron on Thor, and is actually drawing Secret Wars.
Yeah.
So good artist, just not good artist for that story with Rick Remender.
Yeah, whatever. Like you said, all that stuff. It was the perfect combination to equal a huge letdown coming off of such a hot chase.
Right.
And that was just such a weird time. That was like I don't even know what that was like. It was just weird. It was like doing your girlfriend something that's not wrong, but it still feels wrong for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like catching your girlfriend picking her nose or something. It's just like
nice.
Yeah. It's like it's not wrong, and it's not going to turn you off of her. It's just going to be like, for a while you're going to be like, that's kind of gross.
Yeah.
And then when it's done and over, you'll go back. Until that point, go. And then, we were talking about Earth 1 a lot. The new Earth 1 series comes out, or graphic novel.
Yeah, the third Superman Earth 1 graphic novel, which, man. Superman is definitely the weak link of the Earth ones so far, and from what I understand, 3 does not do anything to fix that, but I will probably read it anyway, more out of morbid curiosity than anything.
Teen Titans, Earth 1, Jeff Lemire.
Yeah, I've heard really great things about the first one.
That's one of the that and The Wake are the two things next for me to buy on my back pile list, and both of those, especially Teen Titans, was the one that everyone's like, oh wow, this is a really good Earth 1 book.
Yeah. That was the one that finally basically settled the idea that Earth 1 could actually be worth reading. I don't know. I thought the Jeff Johns one was okay.
Yeah, it was. It had and I mean this, he wrote Flashpoint, but it had a very Flashpoint kind of feel to me, honestly.
It did. And honestly, I felt like he ridiculously misunderstood the character of Alfred.
Yeah. And I agree, and it was very... yeah. But knowing that, and knowing you have Wonder Woman, Grant Morrison, Wonder Woman coming up, back to Morrison, I'm sure.
I'm sure everyone's shocked.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really hoping. And then, I text this to you. I can put it on the podcast because I'm really excited about it. And it shocked me because Neil Gaiman on his current book tour, he's doing 2 stops in Oklahoma.
Yes,
and I'm going to do my best for me and my best friend to go see him live because. He's someone that I go out of my way to buy his Audible books because he's one of the few people that he reads his own Audible books, and it's amazing.
They are. His reading for Fragile Things is still one of my favorite audiobooks.
It's incredible, and I, for one, would love to see him too because I hear the crowds on his book tours are the craziest things in the world because everyone from 18-year-old goth kids to 72-year-old very well-to-do businessmen, which sounds incredible to me.
Yes.
And it's of course, very reflective of his work. And apparently what he's been doing is he has a musical backing of string quartets with him doing a soundtrack for his entire live performance.
Oh, wow.
While he's reading excerpts from Trigger Warning and taking questions, and they're doing a live soundtrack the entire time.
That's insane.
Yeah,
awesome.
Which, it's really cool. And once I'll do one more plug for him for some reason, maybe because he should be on this podcast. And
yes,
that's all that's my secret purpose for going there, to get him on the podcast. It's a joke now until it happens, and it'll be incredible.
Then it'll be a fantastic coup.
Yes, exactly. I don't care if you give us 4 minutes. That's all we need.
Yes.
And then we'll have to explain why Derek didn't put him on his top 5 writers of all time list, which is going to be embarrassing.
Yes, I will be incredibly contrite at that point.
That would be horrible if we get Neil Gaiman on here, on the first person to do an interview on this podcast, and a huge name, and we come right off of, he was almost on my list.
Yeah, he's okay.
He's okay. What? He's one of few.
He's no Scott Lobdell.
Aw. God, now that just sounds insulting. He's only,
oh man, I cannot help but think that may be the perfect place to end it, my friend.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe saying Neil Gaiman's no Scott Lobdell. All Neil Gaiman wrote was Sandman and American Gods.
Yep.
Lobdell.
Man, he did not create Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Hey, don't you talk no mess about this. I'll stick by them.
So everyone yell at me for making a terrible joke about Neil Gaiman versus Scott Lobdell at our email address, which is blablapodcast@gmail.com. You can yell at me and call me names personally on my Twitter feed. I'm at Voodoo Ben.
Or yell at me at HellhoundF5.
And we will be back sometime, with new content, and most likely ranting about comics of the day, and quite possibly, if rumor has it, maybe the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice trailer.
Oh yeah, that's true. That should be coming out within a week or two, hopefully. Yeah, news there. Oh, really quick, because we didn't talk about last podcast. Did you like the Fantastic Four trailer?
I am surprised at how much I like the Fantastic Four trailer. I have gone from I will not see that movie to I could see myself seeing this movie. I am actually kind of excited. That trailer was everything I wanted in a trailer, especially a teaser trailer. That's
the same way I feel. Yeah, so I think that's probably it for today, folks.
Thanks everybody for listening. Hit us up on email or Twitter, and let us know how you're finding us.
Yes.
Apparently we're on iTunes now, we're on Podomatic, and we're on YouTube.
Yes, so click on stuff, like stuff, subscribe stuff, do stuff, share stuff, do stuff, pretty much. Go create something tonight.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I am, in fact, going to go work on the second draft of my novel.
Very good.
In honor.
I'm going to watch wrestling and try to write to you.
Fantastic. Good night, everybody.
Bye.